So back out touring and doing your thing, correct?
Well, I mean, it's not touring like the old days. It's just kind of, you do a gig, you do weekends like 4 in a row. And, I kind of do, I'm kind of out every weekend doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It just depends. I mean, and I'm going back I do a lot of stuff in Europe. So I'm going back there in September for 3 weeks, and mostly solo stuff, and then, in between the band gigs.
So, when our mutual friend Denise had kind of told me about this, I was sort of blown away because, on the one hand, you're known as, one of the iconic rock stars of, the 80s, early 90s, and, frontman of Winger. And then to find out you have this whole, I don't want to say alter ego, but almost sort of like an alter ego. Is that something that's always been in you and a passion that's been in you to sort of compose music and be an accomplished composer, more even on the classical end versus the all-and-out rock star?
Well, for me, it's always been a journey of music. So I started in a band when I was very young, and with my older brothers, we played rock music, and I was a self-taught musician, but I always heard much more sophisticated stuff that was in my kind of, in my ear of what I heard when I wanted to write music. So I always approached, especially since the first Winger record, I would always approach even the rock stuff from a composition point of view. And a lot of my 70s influences were prog rock, where the compositions were really what it was all about. So I don't actually see a difference in my approach. Hasn't really gone through much of a change except for learning the process of writing for the orchestra and learning how to write bigger forms and break through the pattern of songwriting.
And almost in that form, you can tell a story, but tell a story musically and help people connect that way to it. Have you noticed a big difference in your writing and your ability kind of being on that route? And has that ever transferred over into sort of the more Winger type of music that you do? And is there, I guess, a place for both of them in all you do?
Well, it's interesting. It's hard to manage both, but it seems to feed each other. I mean, you have to be real disciplined about your time management and keeping the muscle going in terms of, just actually sitting down to do it. My last big piece was this piece called Conversations with Nijinsky, and it's a 20-minute piece for full orchestra. We recorded it at Oberlin, and it took a year to write it. And I mean, you really have to sit down and make sure you do it. And I haven't written anything for a year. I've got 2 projects that that are bubbling under. I've written some notes for other pieces, but I mean, you really have to, when you're doing what I do, where I leave town every week and tour a lot and doing a whole other genre of music and am well known for that other thing, I mean, you really have to stay on it. You got to really push, make it, so you get it done. It's the old thing. If nobody else is going to do it for you, so you really got to make it happen. And so that's difficult to manage, but conceptually it's one feeds the other. And I always thought that I always envied people that went through the music school, academia, having learned all these things that I was fantasizing about that I thought I needed to learn. And it's only taken me until now to realize that my path, actually helps with my classical music because it gives me a different perspective on it, and I'm not incarcerated by some of the rules that other people might be, with traditional. But the traditional pedigree of studying classical music at a university.
Well, it's sort of like a learn at your own pace type of thing. And, what I appreciate about, just talking to you is we're both, maybe in different points in our life and different journeys, but we're both on a journey and we both have a quest for knowledge. What drives you to, I guess, continue to learn this craft when, you've accomplished more than many musicians will ever accomplish in a lifetime, that being having a band, a very popular band, hit songs, the tour, the whole 9 yards, the fans. What drives you to keep going and learning more than what you've already known?
I'm just one of those kind of people. I just want to know stuff, and
mm-hmm.
But I'm not like, I don't want to know a bunch of trivia. I'm really into music too. I mean, my wife, to ad nauseum, dude. I mean, if I just did nothing but study music, I'd be happy, So, I've just been so interested in it. And when I hear it, I'm so moved by certain things that I hear that I want to know how to do them. And it wasn't, I got an ear for classical music when I studied ballet when I was a kid. I was like 16. And I was in a ballet company. I was like, yeah.
Oh.
And that's kind of a fairly well-known thing that I studied ballet. But what people don't know necessarily is that I really got an ear for classical music doing ballet because we were dancing to Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky and that kind of thing. So I was thinking, wow, somebody actually wrote this, and because I was playing Black Sabbath every night in the clubs. So,
was that difficult was that difficult to hear you're trying to dance, you're trying to do the ballet, and your ear is focused in on the music. Was that tough, or did it actually help you in the ballet process?
Oh,
too?
no. It's just, you just become one with it all, It's not difficult at all. I mean, any dancer would tell you that the music is what drives them. You just become one with it. So, but that's where I got an ear for it. It wasn't until many, many years later when I really put my foot down and said, okay, I'm going to actually study this and the proper way to do this. So in 92, with the fall of the 80s, so to speak, when none of the bands like us could get a gig, really. I moved out into the hills of New Mexico and built a studio and taught myself a new language of how to, go about music again, because the stuff that Winger was doing and the bands of our type, I mean, we were gone. I mean, you couldn't get a gig even. It was completely off the radio, and so I thought, well,
was that frustrating? Or
frustrating wouldn't be the word I would use. I would say that it was, it was disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
But
you had something extra in there. It
was frustrating. It was frustrating for me personally because we got singled out, and I think that we musically were on a higher level than a lot of our colleagues, and I thought it was, it was kind of. But later I talked to Mike Judge about it, and it was kind of like it was just luck of the draw. We just ended up on the shirt, so it is what it is. In looking back on it, perhaps it's the one thing that was the thing that forced me to go study the kind of music I wanted to write. And I had time to do it, because if it never happened, then I'd be on tour constantly, and I wouldn't have actually been able to tackle the workload of learning how to write for an orchestra. So, I mean, you could spin it in many different ways, and I just, my path was my path. So I started studying with a cat at University of New Mexico, just, nothing earth-shattering, just like, species counterpoint and harmony and stuff like this, but stuff that was way out of the norm for like a rock guy, but not necessarily for some. I mean, there was definitely some schooled rock guys, like, especially keyboard players that came up through the, kind of Keith Emerson and John Lord and people like that, but,
well, I think that a lot of today's musicians, maybe some of the newer musicians today, we're sort of brought up having that classical training. And that's why, like I'll pick one, Lady Gaga, for example. She's amazing on the piano and an amazing vocalist because she had that kind of training. So I think more and more musicians are going to be on the path that you're on, as the years go on. But I have to ask, when you're kind of doing what you did in Winger and you're now going to the classical, I mean, that's a lot of, I would imagine, instruments to learn because you're now writing for other instruments that you might not have ever touched. Was it frustrating did it come naturally to you, or was it frustrating a little bit to sort of start getting the hang of it all?
Man, you know what? It can be very frustrating, and it was for a long time. It's kind of like, do you ever look into one of those pictures where you stare at it long enough, and then all of a sudden you see the 3D effect?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was like. It was like staring at a photograph that looks two-dimensional, and then once you break through that, all of a sudden you see it, and once you see it, it doesn't go away. Right now, I could sit down and write you something for the orchestra, no problem. But yeah, it was really, really tough for a while, just wrapping my head around who should play what and what the voicing should be, and the best voicings for this set of instruments against this set of instruments. And now that's a never-ending. That's the glory of music, and that's why I'm so into it, because it's a miracle. You can continue to do new combinations of sonorities, and it's infinite. You can just never repeat yourself and always discover something. To me, that's just absolutely, the essence of why I like music and why I've devoted my life to it. So, yeah, I mean, it was difficult at first. You have to know transposing instruments, and you go through the 4 sections of the orchestra. The wind, the horns, the brass, the strings and the percussion, and then you have to, within those 4 groups, you have to know, all the instruments that are corralled in that set of sonorities. So it's a lot of work, man, and I don't recommend it for anybody unless you are driven to do it beyond your ability to cope, which was the case for me.
Well, and yours was maybe a little bit of a different story here. You wanted to continue the career. That's what you knew, and when you, as you said, that the gigs dried up for Winger, I'm actually, it's actually a really good story because you chose not to just die, so to speak, and go away. You chose to take the challenge and sort of propel yourself to be even better. I have to wonder, though, now that you're on this path, this classical path, and have been, is it tough for you to sort of go back and write the Winger-type songs or those rock-type songs because now your head has all these ideas and just a greater arsenal, if you will, to use?
No, it's great because I can look down on the Winger thing and from a much higher perspective and make it fresh and do things with. I mean, look, it's just a heavy metal guitar. It doesn't. If you put a new scale on it, it's going to sound fresh. And so now I have much more tools at my fingertips to try and apply it to rock music. So I find it's the one reason that our music doesn't sound bankrupt, but like so many other rock bands that continue to put out albums that sound exactly the same as the one they just did, and it's like the same song over and over and over again. And we don't do that. Every song that we're doing has a fresh element because I'm sitting there going, oh, well, let's try this technique, so and one's really fed the other. And in return, I can go into the classical thing and say, let's make these cellos sound like, a doubled heavy metal guitars going through Marshalls.
Right.
You know, so.
And people are probably sitting at home wondering, what is that? What are they doing? But that's good because you want, especially for me, I'm a huge music fan, and I write songs as well. And for me, it's always got to be different. It's got to be what somebody else is not doing. So I like that, and that's what I listen for music. And you guys even did, as Winger, Silent Night, the Christmas song, which I thought was a fantastic job done on a song, and different, I think, when you had put it out than what we were used to sort of hearing.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round your virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy.
How often are you with the band? I mean, you kind of divide your time now between, I don't know how often Winger still plays, if they still play a whole lot, and then, you're composing stuff. You have to balance that a lot?
We do an album every 2 or 3 years. I mean, we do it because we like each other so much, and my guys are really good, so I feel honored to be able to play with those guys because they're on such a high level. Rod Morgenstein, he's one of the best drummers in the world, so...
All the original members?
Yeah, well, John Roth is our second guitar player. He's been in since 91, but we just did these 25th anniversary shows. We were just in Vegas, man, last Saturday. We played the first album beginning to end.
Really?
And,
that's awesome. I wish I had known about that.
Yeah. So we still play. We're going to Japan in January. We're doing the Monsters of Rock cruise in March, and I'm sure a lot more gigs are going to come up. We're working on a new album now. And I like doing it. Songwriting has been in me since I was a kid, so it's something that'll always be a part of me. And then I switch over. I have several projects I'm working on, the classical thing, and it's a whole other deal. And by the way, it's really a labor of love. You definitely don't set out to do classical music to try to earn a living or something. This is art for art's sake, and an arena where I'm only doing it to make an artistic statement and to make it at the highest level I can possibly do it without thinking of anything commercial, no selling of the T-shirt, nothing like that, because all that stuff contributes to poisoning, what I consider to be real true art when you start to commercialize your thoughts in any way.
Well, and I think, that the record labels are, especially with what you see now, you see a lot of those 360 deals, when record labels caught on that a lot of bands were making a lot of their money on the merchandise sold at shows. So then the record deals wanted in on that. And I could totally see your point where the entire process just becomes polluted. But again, I think that the person like you who really goes above and beyond in the extra mile and really has the passion for learning, your success is almost guaranteed.
You know what? I don't know about that, and I don't spend much time thinking about it anymore because, like I say, my whole thing is I just want to understand music from my perspective. So it'd be great if I sold a crap load of records, but if I don't, it's not going to change my approach. That's a proven fact because I got our band got the crap knocked out of us back in the early 90s, and it didn't change my approach. Other than the fact that I just kept learning more. I still make records with Reb exactly the same as I did them on the first one. So, how
have fans received the new records?
Well,
the fans from Winger.
Well, no, Karma was the last record we had out, and people consider it one of our best records, if not the best. disconnect between Karma and this third record we did called Pull. And, you know, we haven't been in the mainstream yet, dig for it, but I mean, you know, they call it melodic rock or 80s, you know, whatever it is. You know, our last record is rival to our best, and that's a big compliment, because there's a lot of bands out there that go, oh, you know, your first record was the best thing you did 25 years ago. And that's because the people stopped keeping it fresh and, you know, learning stuff. I mean, for me it is. I don't really know anybody else's process. I mean, you know, it might be totally different, and they're still writing great tunes. You know, you said something earlier that I did want to point out, though. I think that nowadays with the record, with the internet and everything, it's created this awesome, what do I want to say, like
well, it's a platform, I think,
platform for young bands to just come out and promote themselves. And there's a lot of good, new, young material out there, a lot of great songwriters, a lot of super talent that you would have never even seen, you know. So,
sure. Yeah.
Although we're making a lot less money in the music business, I think that the actual idea of music has improved a lot since the internet has come out, because, you know, a lot of the young people that wouldn't have normally gotten a shot, that are super talented, great writers, they can put their own album out. And, you know, the Civil War is a perfect example. They put their own album out, and it was huge, you know, and they did it by themselves.
Well, and I think even just to expand upon that a little bit, you know, it also taught people to be better than what they are, because, you know, you couldn't get away, and, you know, you couldn't get away with just being a mediocre band or a mediocre musician anymore. You really had to know your stuff, because, you know, the advent of the internet forced everybody to be, I think, better at their game, because they had to be. Otherwise, that person, you know, next door, he's really talented, you were just okay. So I think that's helped, and it's a good thing, you know. And so as much as it has helped other musicians get their stuff out there that ordinarily wouldn't be, it's also pushed everybody, I think, to become better at their craft, which I like too. And you were already, I guess, you know, leaps and bounds ahead of the game. I understand too that you teach people, you know, your craft. And how do you kind of factor that in with Winger and with your other projects in the classical realm? How do you do it all?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I don't really teach that many people. I get some inquiries on my webpage to do Skype lessons and stuff, mostly voice, and sometimes songwriting. Sometimes I analyze people's songs and stuff, but I in no way consider myself an authority on any of it. I would just give my opinion, and it's helpful to some, especially singing. I mean, I can definitely help singers, but as far as writing music, it's largely subjective, so I just give my own opinion, and you know, people take it for what it is or whatever. But I mean, you know, I like to pass on whatever I can to whoever I can, you know, because a lot of stuff was given to me. So, you know, if the people are out there that want to do it.
Well, I think that it helps. I definitely think it helps. You know, you're a respected musician. So I want to ask a couple of, not necessarily fun questions, but different questions, you know, so people can sort of connect with you. Are you spiritual at all?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've spent many years on different spiritual quests, and right now, I'm really just kind of very pragmatically going about life, you know, one day at a time. But I come from a long line of preachers and teachers. They all like doctorate degrees on my dad's side, and they were also ministers, but I was never really, I don't consider myself religious in any way.
Sure. Well, I think religion and spirituality are much, much different, and people, you know, have ideas. But just based on what I had read in the recent readings of what you were doing, it sort of seemed that way. If Kip Winger weren't in Winger, and Kip Winger weren't doing classical music, what would Kip Winger be doing?
If I wasn't musically inclined, I would be an architect and build houses on communities that were kind of, I would like, you know, green communities with art, kind of art loft things, you know, like you know, just build like 40 houses for artists with a kitchen commune thing, you know, like kind of design stuff.
Yeah, that's actually a neat idea. Well, and I don't know how many of those exist. I know maybe a couple of them do, but that's like an artist community, so the artist is still in you. What makes you absolutely insanely mad that you can't stand?
Animal abuse. You know, like the Chinese skinning dogs alive for the fur. I mean, if I was God, I would love to kill them all.
What is the one thing a fan has said to you that had such an impact that you still remember it to this day?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. I've never thought about that one. What has a fan said?
Or that made a difference, I guess, in the way you've kind of, proceeded through life, maybe.
That's a really interesting question. I have no idea. I can't remember.
Right.
I never retain any of that stuff. I mean, I'm always moved by people that are, so probably when, my first wife died in a car wreck, and I wrote a record called Songs from the Ocean Floor. And I've had a lot of people tell me that album has helped them get through the loss of one of their loved ones. So that's probably the most meaningful thing fans have told me. About that my music spiritually actually helped them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How, if you don't want to talk about it, I know we have just a couple minutes left, but how are you with that? How has that sort of helped you writing that and going through that? How has that formed who you are?
That was extremely difficult, but that was, it was very cathartic to do that album, and as it is every album. I mean, I think that's what artists do. They do their art to work out things that are happening inside them. I mean, that really is the definition of an artist, I think. So, that album really, was the one that was my kind of, the psychological makeup and, the working out of all the pain that I was in for that. And I'm, moved on and happily remarried and all of that. And, death happens. I mean, that's what it is. It's just, death is for the living, and we keep the people that we love with us and in our DNA, and it just kind of all, goes through the cycle of life. I mean, that's just,
well, I think you did the right thing. You pay homage to it, and you recognize it, and you move on, and that's really all we can do. Yeah. What are you most thankful for right now in this day and age, present time?
My health.
Yeah,
without question. Because I mean, all this stuff, nothing means anything if you don't have your health.
Well, is that a result of not, the reputation, perhaps, among, the type of music you did in the sort of nightly routine would lead someone to believe that you guys all did a lot of hard living, but maybe that's not the case for you. Were you just more of a straight lace back then?
Man, I never did drugs. I quit drinking in January. I never was a heavy drinker either. I never really saw any of it. I got into Alice Cooper when I was 24, and he was 6 years he was 6 years sober. So I mean, I never saw it. I was never around it. I can't remember any time I was around like super drug addict kind of rock guys. I mean, and by the way, I mean, my take on the writing books that, yeah, man, I almost died because I did so much heroin or something. I mean, my opening line would be, I always thought that was really stupid. So, I mean, why do something that's going to kill you? I just never got it. It was never never glamorous to me, and I can't relate.
Yeah, well, I mean, which is good, and I think that obviously that directly is directly connected to your success and your ability and what you're at now. Because again, a lot of the people that were in similar bands to yours back at that time are no longer in bands, and you don't know what happened to them. And here I'm talking to Kip Winger, who has still just as much of a career as he always did, which is great. One more question for you, because then I think our recording time is going to run out, and it's been awesome to talk with you, and I totally appreciate it. What would your advice be, not necessarily just in the music realm, but what would your advice be to, somebody growing up nowadays, just about life in general?
Well, about life in general. I mean, you know what? I'm living proof that your dream can come true. Like, if you work hard enough, you can do it. I was up against a lot of obstacles, and I got where I wanted to be, and I'm still getting to where I want to be. And even after the height of my success, I never in a million years imagined that a symphony orchestra would play my stuff in a concert setting. I only thought it would be possibly a ballet or something. And I've now achieved that, and I mean, you just keep going. I mean, that's the thing, is if you believe in yourself enough, and it doesn't take a lot, you just have to actually do the work. You have a teeny little idea, but if you time manage and make something happen towards that goal every day, you'll get there, because I'm living proof of it.